Hello everyone. So today we're going to be talking about the flat earth theory. It's not really a theory because of the cropping done by NASA on Jupiter and Earth and Saturn. So what we found is that the earth is flat. It remarkably has probably a rift in time can send you into a whole nother realm of the earth. So the earth is flat, but it also is ongoing. In a different way, it has continents beyond what we see, and really to get there you have to go through a rift in time. Also, what are we talking about? We're talking about CERN and creating a vortex that can go to deep space, or there isn't really space out there, there's just time, and it's filled with a water or a liquid of some sort. So there you go. The firmament is sound. It means that we are in between two waters, two pools, and we are coming to the point where we see that the real future is hacking our fourth dimension to see the afterworld, the underworld, and also to see the mainframe, the heart mainframe in the fifth dimension. And by doing that we have to not hack, but first of all we need wormholes to gain the information to do it. Second of all, we need to create a gateway to the fifth dimension, and then we go to the sixth dimension and we start to see how many futures there are of us. And if we can gather our futures together, then we can create a economic between all our presents and all our futures and go from there. And that's a gateway that hopefully we can open as well. Physics, right? And what else is there? There's all the infinity of eternity and all of these ways of going about changing our reality. And the seventh dimension is the universal dimension. It has a twin, so the universe has a twin, and then there's the center part of the twin, and it goes around kind of like a pretzel, only it has that third part in the middle, so it's kind of like a trinity. The universe has two sides to it, and then kind of a cerebellum, so it's kind of like a brain. Next we got the eighth dimension, which is kind of a time, but it's for certain types of structure only. All I can say is that it's more Nazi. The people that are in the eighth dimension are more Nazi. And then you got the ninth dimension, which is quite a big dimension, but it's got tons of time and so many variables on what you can do, where you can go. There's the potential that with all the hydrogen and helium on Saturn, that theoretically life could exist on Saturn, given they live off hydrogen and float with the helium. But really it's you think about it, it's the rings that say that there's another whole dimension to Saturn, just like there is flat Earth, and then there's an exterior donut or a circle, a frisbee to the flat Earth here, and there's more to it. There's continents. There's it's totally separate from the dead Earth, the afterlife. So it's totally different ways to get there too. But it's what's beyond the Arctic shelf, right? And it really is a a tier, a level. There's levels to it. That's what we're seeing with our dimensions right now. And there's so many dimensions, and we want the good ones, the ones that really help us, the ones that we can relate to. What we're going to find is that there was a theory of observation on photons, right? If we observe the photon, they act differently than if we don't observe them. That means we're in a game of some sort. But it's really that there's a host in the photon that registers to the brain, and when we see the photon from the brain, it changes. So it's intelligent, it's AI in some ways, but we have to change that ourselves, and we have to look at the Borgverse and see where our thoughts are clouding us, and cloud is a key term to that. Now, what else? There's the 26th dimension, and that has time. I don't know why it's not the 25th, but it's a 26th dimension, and it's got a lot of time to it, and it allows us to function there, and it's very large, huge. Granted, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of dimensions, but we're trying to get into the mainframe, and that's a deep dimension, and we can do it through the 5th dimension because of how it relates to pi and how it relates to the 6th question, which I was just studying earlier this week. I forget certain things. My mind can't remember everything, but it's basically infinity within a circle, and it's basically you have your linear pathways. You have 2 pathways linear, and then you have an underneath dimensional connector or between those lines, and it's kind of like a wave, only 3 ways, and it's it has so many functions to get every possible outcome. So that's what I learned about how we're creating wormholes. Those wormholes are coming down with information, and our mathematicians are getting so much information. They're working so fast. But wormholes have power, you know, and it really comes with a price. Hopefully we'll make it and find the 5th dimension well, and realize there's a mainframe to it, and the mainframe has control over much of it, so if not all. So we're trying to find the mainframe. It's been under renovation. So, and then there's where we go after death, and what we found is that we can communicate with the dead, we can see the dead, we can feel the dead, and finally we can see where we stand in the nick of time and the shores of time. So basically, when I was young, I had a dream that there was no space and then an infinite time, and I should have stuck with that. But at times I felt, you know, there's room, right? There's all this room, and we all have our rooms. But that is time in itself. Time is a room. It's not space. So let me clarify that. How many dimensions have time? There's so many, and just to know that what we have is so many intrinsic methods to figure out where all our portholes are, our stargates, our photon teleportations, where our electrons will be split and how they come together. There's one electron probably in the universe. It's manipulating everything in our world, and it really is the fusion of the electron that has got everyone talking. Because if we can fuse and separate electrons, even though they flux, because they're the same one, we can build something from that. And it's building perhaps anti-gravity, perhaps cold fusion, perhaps a coil core. There's so many options we can develop with that. And so what else have I been looking at lately? There's a big rift in certain areas of the world within time, where time flies or time changes so abruptly that things happen. One is the Bermuda Triangle. It's been seen that there's a rift in time there, and there's just different areas, different time zones, different feelings. There is such a thing as a twilight zone, and I think we've come to the realization that if we really believe and start looking around and noticing, we'll come to see that we're not in Kansas anymore. And although we are on Earth, it's relative to us, not round Earth, but on a flat Earth basis. That we are the people looking at a host photon in everything, and these photons are controlling us, and we need to overcome those. And the only way to do that is reprogram them. And to do that, we have to go inside and in depth and take a look at how to master the digital world. And that's also the Tronverse, right? And then there's the Gameverse, the game world, which we can probably create intelligent life on, and artificial intelligence. And there's a big battle going on for control. The Bible says that we destroyed AI, and to do that we have to realize that the artificial worlds we create are going to show us that consciousness is more than what we expect. But to be honest, I do believe that what we have here is so much data that we see ourselves as a game in some ways, but it's the reboot, I think, that we need to look into. And there is a force, and that's what separates us somewhat from the game consciousness, is what I'm saying, because game consciousness is pulling us into it, but there's a force that says we're here. This is not just a game. This is a form that we go to, and we have to relate the form. And it's also about seeing what we can do to stop ourselves from falling into the same pattern of deja vu and eternal recurrence, where we do the same thing. If we tallied ourselves and said we've done this before, we'd be in a better shape, because we'd be doing some things differently. And it's a mental game we have to play, that we go and push our boundaries. And to do that, we have to we must communicate with each other. That's the only way to really overcome the deja vu and the whole idea that we've done everything and nothing's changed. Now, I've talked to my dad lately, and I told him, there's nothing here, there's nothing. And it seems the world is completely unbridgeable. It's unbridgeable, and it would seem it is kind of a twilight zone phenomena. But because we're all in our separate little room doing our same thing, and we can't connect, we can't go out and actually form the religion we were called to form. And that's talking about all this stuff, because someone died for our sins, and that means that we communicate, and that means we experience what the sin of of our mathematical term sin is really about. And basically what we have to see is the world is flat. It's sort of like it's a tan in some ways. It's a tan or a toss. It's a toss in some ways too. And if we look at the triangle differently of sin, cos, tan, and toss, we'll see so much more to trig and hopefully see ourselves better in seeing the firmament. What else is there? So they're talking to the future, they're getting information, they're getting code, they're getting video, they're getting media, they're getting data, and it's a big issue right now because they're actually communicating with the dead, and the dead are an army unto themselves, and basically they want to bridge the gap, but when they figure it out, I'm sure they'll let us know. The Earth is, in a way, caught in so many dimensions we can't even see each other. I mean, if I could go to a place that could reference another, I would. But the only way I can do that is through this, through communicating through a portal, and that's YouTube at this point. And the idea that Mass Effect is a simple web, it's seen that it goes far beyond black holes. It's light, yet it's quantum, and it's Planck in how we experience the core, and the core is so futuristic. It's what is in the mainframe. It's desired to find out all the alien context in human authority, and it's I shouldn't say authority, it's authenticity, and it's the human authenticity that we are striving towards, and we are trying to formulate ways to gather ourselves into a state that can witness and be its own defense on its accord. And that's the law of the land, to be a witness to its own defense on its own accord. And that's what we are doing. Earth is a fairly well place. It's doing fairly well. All we have to do is change a few perceptions, and we suddenly realize there's a flat that can go in so many directions, and there's so many different keyholes. There's so many different areas that unlock a door to another room of the mansion, and that's what the future is getting at. The dead is only one area. Then there's so many other levels to the Earth, and I think flat Earth kind of with the firmament explains it a bit more in detail. I just hope that I hope we're able to eventually walk with the dead. I hope we're able to walk with our future. I hope we're able to walk with main France, and I hope we're able to walk with the other life, like Saturn or beyond our world into the exoplanets that are flat. And the only way to do that is to bridge the latitude and longitude of outer distance and quadrant. And thankfully I see that latitude and longitude have a good role to play in certain quantum and Stargate issues. So with that, it's just going to be a big community in time, because we're slowly going there. And CERN and all the super colliders in space, and all the dimensional time warps and rifts and wormholes, they're all going to come through. It's just we have to be aware that certain areas are welcome to us and others are not. We have to do the research. Anyway, thank you and God bless.